Indiana's Newscenter presents The Race for Indiana Governor. Live from the Reinhardt Music Center on the IPFW campus, this is the Democratic Candidates Debate.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Jackson. On behalf of Indiana's Newscenter, the Mike Down Center for Indiana Politics, IPFW, and University Democrats, thank you for attending and for tuning in to tonight's Democratic gubernatorial debate between Geoglain Thompson, applause, applause, and Jim Schellinger. Now, when members of our studio audience entered the hall, they were given cards and asked to submit questions in 6 subject areas, and those areas are as follows: the economy, education, taxes, government reform, health care, and privatization. Now, I will be reading those questions to the candidates, those public questions. Additional questions will come from Jeff Neumeyer of Indiana's Newscenter, Dana Geoglain of University Democrats here at IPFW, and Tracy Warner from the Journal Gazette. Now, before we get to the questions, the candidates will give opening statements. The order of those statements was determined not long ago by a coin toss. The debate will end with closing statements in the same order. Jim Schellinger will be giving the first opening statement. Mr. Schellinger, please make your opening statement.
Thank you, Linda. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. I would like to start by thanking the Indiana News Center and the Mike Down Center for hosting this debate. I would like to thank you, Linda, for moderating it, and the distinguished panel for helping us out tonight. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight and for your interest in this race, especially my wife, Laura, my 3 sons, Nick, John, and Zach, and my extended family. I would also like to thank the Congresswoman. Congresswoman, it's great and honor to be on stage with you discussing the issues that affect our state. I'm running for governor because Indiana can and should be doing better. We deserve better leadership in our state, and everyone knows it's not the hardworking men and women of this state that's holding us back. It's failed leadership in our governor's office. I bring a different approach. I grew up in a working class family and worked my way through college on the second shift at a tool and die shop, grinding steel. And since then, I have built a successful business based on the principles of bringing people together, valuing people, making sure that everyone has a seat at the table, their voices are heard, building consensus, and providing them with leadership and vision. We were promised a new style of leadership in this state, but instead we got arrogant leadership that is completely out of touch with the challenges and the problems we face every day as Hoosiers. We need leadership that will listen to us and bring us together. In my 48 years as a full-time resident right here in Indiana, I have never seen us more polarized than we are today, whether it be on the rights of working men and women, jobs, education, this tax crisis, health care, the environment, or daylight savings time, and the list goes on and on and on. But I've been around all 92 counties, and people believe we can and should be doing better, and I am prepared to provide the leadership this state deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I thank the Mike Down Center for Indiana Politics for hosting this debate. I grew up on a farm not far from here in Whitley County. My parents and grandparents set a very good example for me. They got up at the crack of dawn and worked hard all day long. I had my own chores. I helped milk the cows and feed the hogs and bale hay. And I have to tell you, it was a time when Indiana stood out. People came to Indiana and brought their families here because of the good-paying jobs, jobs that made it possible to put money away to send your children to college or to save for retirement. And Hoosiers were optimistic. My dad taught me to dream big. My parents were the first generation in their families to finish high school. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I believed then, as I do now, that anything is possible. And that's why I'm running for governor, because I know that we can get Indiana back on track. Our state has great promise, but too many families are facing an uncertain future, and too many communities are hurting. In 4 long years of the Daniels administration, we have seen thousands of good-paying jobs leave our state. We have seen property taxes jump through the roof, and we have seen gas prices skyrocket. It is time to bring an end to the Bush-Daniels era in Indiana. I have the plans to bring the needed changes that will create new jobs, improve health care, and strengthen our schools. For 3 terms, I had the honor to serve the people of Fort Wayne in Congress. I worked hard to represent your interests. I voted against every tax increase. I voted against raising the pay for members of Congress, and I voted against bad trade deals. You know, it is time to get Indiana back on track. It is time for Indiana to dream big again, and that's why I'm running for governor.
Our first question tonight is from the public. It goes to Jill Long Thompson, and it's from the healthcare category. The question reads, given the recent appointments to our U.S. Supreme Court, the odds are higher than many recent years of Roe versus Wade being overturned. What would be your stance on Hoosier women's rights?
Well, you know, this is one of the toughest issues I think that families face, and I am a United Methodist, and if you look at our Book of Discipline, you will see that it is a real challenge for us in our church. I believe that this kind of decision is best left to individuals, and I think there have to be limits as to how much the government gets involved in private matters and personal choices and personal decisions. And I believe it is important to uphold Roe versus Wade.
Mr. Schellinger, your response?
Thank you. Well, first, my faith teaches me that abortion is wrong, and I'm against it. But it's my faith, and it's not necessarily the faith shared by everyone throughout our state. As your governor, my first priority will be to protect everyone's rights in this state and to uphold the laws of this land that have been in place for 10 years on this and have done very well. And the focus of my government is not going to be, in my administration, on changing the current laws on this issue that have been in place for 10 years. The focus of my administration is going to be on my Pick Up Indiana plan, to help pick up all of Indiana and move forward, to improve our jobs and economy in this state, to improve our health care situation, our education, and to reform government.
Would you like a rebuttal, Mrs. Long Thompson?
Actually, my position has not changed in the last 60 seconds, so I'm fine.
All right. Our next question goes to Jim Schellinger from the topic of government reform, and it reads, will you commit to no negative ads?
I have said from the beginning here that my goal is to focus on a very positive campaign because I think that's what Hoosiers want around this state. People want to see us dealing with the issues. There have already been some negative attacks, and I think that's wrong because I think everyone here in our audience tonight and our viewing audience, they want us to focus on the issues, and that's what I want to do. I come from a non-traditional background. I'm not a politician. I haven't done this for the last quarter of a century. So my focus is going to be on working toward improving jobs in our state. It's going to be improving education and health care and working toward real government reform to help solve this tax crisis. So I am committed to staying focused on the issues. Now, Laura and I were told when we began this process that people will say anything. They will do anything to win these elections. And if that were to occur, I would find it necessary to defend myself. But I won't go on the offense.
Well, my opponent, Mr. Schellinger, several weeks ago leveled a very negative charge against me, and in fact, the Indianapolis Star referred to it as desperately negative on his part. Regarding my campaign, I have been talking since I entered this race about the issues that are important to Hoosiers, and I think probably the most important issue that we face is getting our economy jump-started again. And that's why I have been talking about my plan for moving Indiana's economy forward, a strategic approach to reforming our overall tax structure, making health care affordable, and improving our education system. And that's what I intend not only to talk about during this campaign, but to work to make the right changes to grow Indiana stronger when I serve as governor.
I would like to just respond to that just briefly. I was responding initially to what Congresswoman Thompson is commenting on. I was responding to an attack previously leveraged against myself in defense. I also think it's important that we focus on the facts, not distorted truths. The attack that had been done on me was a distorted truth. I was simply stating the facts. But I applaud the Congresswoman's commitment, and I commit to staying focused on the issues. Let's be positive. Let's focus on what you want to hear.
The next question goes to Jill Long Thompson, and it will be asked by Jeff Neumeyer.
Thank you, Linda. Candidates, the Democratic nominee for governor figures to have to raise a substantial amount of money to be successful in November. Do you believe that fundraising capacity for the general election should be a major factor that Democratic voters look at as they consider who to vote for when they head to the polls May the 6th?
Well, unfortunately, campaigns at all levels have become very dependent upon fundraising, and I've been very fortunate that many people across the state have committed to supporting my campaign and have made it possible for me to work to get my message out. But I think we need reform of ethics, and we need reform of ethics in state government. And just several weeks ago, I proposed a major ethics reform package that would substantially change the way campaigns in Indiana are financed. It would restrict what limited liability corporations are able to do, for example, and it would make significant changes that would provide public information so that the voters can see where money is coming from and who is contributing to campaigns and whether or not they have a particular interest. I believe that we need reform of our ethics in government here in Indiana. I also believe that we need to do everything we can to make campaigns less costly so that candidates and voters can focus more on the issues, and I think that's why this particular debate here tonight is such a positive event, and I commend the Indiana Newscenter as well as the Mike Downs Center for Indiana Politics for hosting this event. I had hoped to have at least 5 of these around the state, and it's been difficult to even find others in other parts of the state who would be willing to host a debate between Mr. Schellinger and myself. But I believe the best government is government that is closest to the people, and the more kinds of events where we can have direct communication between candidates and voters, I think it is a win-win situation for government and for the great Hoosiers across Indiana.
I, too, believe that government reform is very important. This election will take significant resources for anyone running, especially against an incumbent who will raise enormous amounts of money to focus on the race. I, too, believe that we should have government reform, and once elected, I will work hard to focus on government reform, campaign finance reform, to make sure that it's fair. But the rules are as they are today, and what's important is that we keep these rules and we follow these rules, which my campaign has. Once in office, I plan to work with the State Ethics Commission, with the Lobbying Registration Commission, and with the State Election Commission itself to work on government reform because it's very important. Unfortunately, for a first-time candidate who's never been involved in politics before, that grew up in a working-class family and worked through school, it's important that I raise the resources necessary to get my message out and to get people to understand how I plan to reform and work toward building a better Indiana for everyone. It is important, too, to note that I've had significant investments in my campaign. It's very humbling when people give you contributions to your campaign. Recently in South Bend, a couple came up to me and they handed me a penny. And they gave me that penny and they told me they were going to vote for me. And they told me that they wanted me to never forget them. And the gentleman placed the penny in my hand and he squeezed it. And he said, "Son, when you're the governor, please don't forget people like my wife and I up here in South Bend. We're on a fixed income. And all the money we have after we pay our bills goes to pay for our medicines. And even then we have to ration them out at the end of the month to make them last. So, son, when you're the governor, please remember people like my wife and I. And for people like my wife and I, every penny counts. I know the value of money, and I will use it wisely."
Well, I'm glad that Mr. Schellinger has said that he would support reform in government ethics in the state of Indiana. I would like to ask him if he would be willing to open the books on Trident Air, and if he would be willing to join me in supporting the legislation that would require limited liability companies who make contributions to political candidates to make those books open? And would he also be willing to open the books of CSO architects? He has contributed over $300,000 to political candidates over the last several years, and I fully believe that the public has a right to know where the money is coming from and where it's going.
Our next question goes to Jim Schellinger from the economy category. It reads, what is your position on outsourcing state jobs to out-of-state for-profit companies?
Well, first of all, I need to address that comment. I would be more than willing to open up the books of CSO architects and to Trident Air, and I would respectfully note that I was willing to do so. My legal counsel, unfortunately, the Congresswoman's legal counsel canceled that meeting. The economy and jobs is extremely important. This is the focus of our state right now. We need to work very hard to understand that we've lost 27,000 manufacturing jobs under this governor's watch. We are 5th in the nation in bankruptcies right now. We are 10th in the nation in mortgage foreclosures. Over 50,000 Hoosiers have lost their homes under this governor's watch, and we fail to keep pace with inflation. People can't afford their home fuel bills, their food costs, gas at the gas pump. I have put forth a plan because I know as a business person what it takes to succeed. I know that businesses will expand in this state. They'll come to this state for 3 things and 3 things only. They will come for quality of life. They will come for our education system, and they will come because we have a trained workforce. My Pickup Indiana plan is an actionable plan. It's not a plan of general ideas. It is a focused plan with specific things that can be implemented to move all of Indiana forward today. It focuses on increasing our workforce skills through increasing education and training. My plan focuses on working with small businesses. 2/3 of the jobs in this state are from small businesses. We can get those jobs right now. And the third part of my plan, which is so exciting, focuses on promoting sustainable economic development through the creation of green-collar jobs. Indiana can and should be doing better, and I welcome you to look on my website at www.pickupindiana.com. My plan is meant to be a work in progress. Read it. Let me know what you think. I want to represent you, I want to listen to you, and I want to move all of Indiana forward.
Linda, was that a question on economic development or privatization?
Well, it was under the economy category. And again, the question states, what is your position on outsourcing state jobs to out-of-state for-profit companies?
Thank you. I have been an outspoken critic of Governor Daniels' privatization from the very beginning, even before I was looking at running for governor here in Indiana. And I think that all we have to do is look back at his record when he was the director of the budget for the federal government. It was his office who oversaw the contracts that privatized the services at Walter Reed with tragic results. I have had experience as Undersecretary for Rural Development at the United States Department of Agriculture, where I inherited a program that was being poorly managed, and I had a choice between privatizing it or fixing it, and I chose to fix it, and I chose to fix it well. And I think that we have to have leadership in this state that understands the importance of providing good services and recognizing that outsourcing often brings some money in up front but costs us tremendously down the road. For example, the toll road. Every indication is that that particular investment will be recouped by the Spanish-Australian consortium in somewhere between 15 to 20 years, which means 55 to 60 years of toll monies that should be coming to us to rebuild and maintain our infrastructure will be going outside the United States of America. I think we have to have leadership that understands how to fix the problem, not simply privatize. And let me also say that as governor, I will be as concerned about you, your children and your grandchildren as I am about you. And it is important that we not enter into contracts that give us some upfront money but cost us for many, many decades to come.
Rebuttal time?
Well, I would agree, too, as well, and I have stated many, many times that I am against privatization as an ideology. I find it curious that this governor was able to find $2 billion to outsource with out-of-state companies, yet not find money to give Hoosiers tax relief. I believe that we should hold on to our existing assets, and we should hold our revenue-generating assets and our mission-critical services. We shouldn't sell them off. We should fix the things that our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents worked so hard to build in our state.
All right, the next question goes to Jill Long Thompson, and it's from the category of education, and it reads, what do you plan on doing to help fund and improve our children's education?
Well, I am an educator, and I think that we are failing our students. You know, almost 1/3 of our young people who enter the freshman year in high school will not graduate from high school. And we keep asking our teachers and our schools to do more with less. I stand in direct contrast to Governor Daniels, who is a full supporter of No Child Left Behind. As governor, I will be a leader in this country in reforming No Child Left Behind. And in particular, we need to make sure that our schools have the resources, but that they also have the flexibility to establish the curricula that work so that our teachers can actually teach to the students rather than teach to the test. I think we need reform very dramatically, and a couple of things that I will work to implement as governor. One is to reach out to parents, because the more parents are involved in their children's education, the better the children do, the better the students do, and the higher the graduation rate. But also, we need to reinvest in vocational education, and I'm talking about 21st century vocational education. We also know that there is a positive correlation between good vocational education programs and high school graduation rate. And that provides a win-win situation where not only do we graduate more of our students, but they're ready to enter the workforce. And that brings down the cost of training for businesses, so it helps economic growth. This whole issue with education is important because children, I think, ought to be able to dream big. My dad taught me to dream big. I want our children all across Indiana to dream big, but I also want them to have the ability to live out those dreams.
This is a great topic and one of great interest to me, and I think it was sad that the governor came out, and one of the first acts of his administration was to come out and attack and vilify our schools. Educators across our state were attacked because they resisted education funding cuts that they knew would result in teacher layoffs, a reduction in class size, and a cut in programs. And today, our enrollment in preschool is 8% lower than the national average. Our enrollment in kindergarten is 5% lower than the national average. We have over 20,000 students that drop out of high school, and during this time, our cost of higher education has risen 20%, while our SAT scores have fallen. Growing up in a working class family with 8 kids, I know the hardships my parents endured, making sure that our education was funded, and they were totally involved in our education, and I learned firsthand the importance of that. I worked my way through college on the second shift at a tool and die shop, grinding steel, and even then I graduated with a significant student loan that I didn't pay off for many years after my graduation. So I believe we have to work hard to make education affordable. Everything is connected to everything. As I mentioned before, our job situation, our education, our healthcare system, our government reform. I was very excited just this past week to put forth my Pick Up Indiana education plan that I believe will focus on moving us forward, an entire education movement. It focuses on working with our public schools, not against our public schools. I have proposed a education-first budget that we will focus on paying for our kids' education first and foremost before anything else. My education budget will focus on attracting and retaining and recruiting world-class teachers and making sure that they are appropriately compensated, and my plan will make higher education affordable. But lastly, my plan is focused on creating an entire paradigm shift. Unlike Mitch Daniels, I don't see education as an expense. I see it as an investment that we need to focus on, and we need to foster an entire new mentality in our state of pre-K through 80 education.
For us to grow our economy, it is critical that we have schools that rival schools all across the country, and I think we want to have schools that set us apart. We have to get our high school graduation rate up. We have to get more of our young people graduated from college, and we also need to have a full-service community college system. These are all issues on which I will provide leadership to the state to make sure that it's possible for children to fulfill their promise and to live out their dreams.
Our next question comes again from our panel tonight. Dana Geoglain, it's your turn.
All right, thank you, Linda. Thanks to the candidates for coming to IPFW. I will be graduating soon from IPFW. I'd like to stay near my family, but opportunities are pulling me away from Indiana. Tell me 3 things you are going to do to keep recent and future graduates here in Indiana.
Mr. Schellinger.
Well, first of all, we have to make sure that we have a quality education system in this state, and it starts with early childhood education. That's why I'm such an advocate of preschool. I'm such an advocate of full-day kindergarten. And my Pick Up Indiana education plan will ensure that education is fully funded and that children receive the highest degree of education here in our state. In my plan, I have also focused on the second thing that I think is important, and that is making sure that every single person in our state has an opportunity to go to college. Too many kids are hurt by the affordability of college, and we have to make college affordable. That's why in my Education First budget, I propose that we always make sure that higher education is fully funded. I have also made a proposal that our state education systems here, when they have a good year, when their endowment revenues exceed 10%, I am proposing that they split those endowment revenues 50% and use that 50% toward lowering education costs of our higher education. On the surface, that may not seem like a lot, but in this past year, Purdue University would have put forth $75 million to lowering the cost of higher education, and Indiana University would have put forth $85 million toward lowering those costs. And the third thing is we have to have a job for you. It's very important that we have quality, high-paying, good jobs in this state that people can raise a family on, and my jobs plan will do just that. You'll be able to send your kids to college with the jobs that we'll have in this state, and you'll be able, Daniel, to make your dream of a secure retirement a reality under my Pick Up Indiana jobs plan. I would again welcome you to take a look at it, review it. I want to know what you think about it, but it's very important that we invest in Indiana and keep the Hoosiers of our state working, because once you have your education, you have your jobs, you will have a good quality of life and a great place to raise a family.
The best way to keep young professionals in Indiana is to make sure that we have an economy that supports the kinds of jobs that are commensurate with their skill levels and their interests and their education. And I believe for us to have long-term sustained economic growth, we have to take an approach very different from that of Governor Daniels and also very different from that of my primary opponent. Both Governor Daniels and Jim Schellinger's approach to economic development is very bureaucracy-oriented, very program-oriented. They create bureaucracies to try to create jobs. And I think the best way to create jobs is to have a tax structure that's fair to Hoosier families, but that also works for businesses and helps them to invest in new technologies and increase productivity, but also bringing down the costs of health care. That helps us to grow the economy here. My approach to making health insurance affordable is to require every health insurance company that sells health insurance in Indiana to provide a pooling option so that small businesses and medium-sized businesses and families can purchase health insurance at rates that are comparable to what the large corporations are paying. And I think we also have to have education reform. But my approach is very different. And let me make one other point about health insurance costs. My opponents in the primary, Jim Schellinger's approach to trying to get more people insured is to go to the taxpayers and ask them to subsidize the insurance premiums for small businesses. It does nothing to bring down the cost of health insurance. We have to have an approach that in the marketplace will bring those costs down. But with affordable health insurance, with a good tax structure, with improved education, we can grow the economy in jobs that are going to work for the young men and women who are going on to technical school and graduating from college, and we can keep them right here at home.
Look, I'm not a politician. I am a business person. I have spent the last 24 years in the business world building a successful and respectful small business, and that's why I put forth a plan for jobs and economy that is actionable, that is real tangible results that we can implement immediately to keep people working in our state. My health care plan is focused on reducing health care costs in every single category, including small business health care pools that I propose would be administered from my small office of business advancement that will help keep our health care costs lower. So please review my health care plan. You make the judgment. www.pickupindiana.com.
Our next public question reads as follows. Are there any state agencies you would privatize, and perhaps what would you do for agencies already privatized?
Well, I cannot think of any state agencies that I would privatize, but I have said from the very beginning that if I'm elected governor, that I will review every privatization contract entered into by this governor, determine what our legal options are, and then proceed forward taking the course of action that is in the best interest of Hoosiers across our great state. And I have real concerns about a number of the contracts that this governor has entered into. Most specifically FSSA. I have concerns about the quality of service that we're able to provide. And I also thought it was very interesting that our governor entered into a privatization contract with IBM for our social services at the same time that Texas was actually canceling their contract with the same company. I know that Governor Daniels would like to privatize even more in the state. He has talked about privatizing the lottery, and I think that that would just result in a number of things, including probably some money up front, but long-term costs for Hoosiers, but it would probably also result in increased advertising and encouraging of people to gamble. And I think that's an issue that we need to take a look at. So I cannot think of any agency that I would seek to privatize, and I have to say that I think we need to work to get back under good management with good leadership some of the agencies that have already been privatized.
You know, it was interesting in the governor's State of the State address, he stood up on TV in front of thousands of Hoosiers and claimed that he went to a Fortune 500 company 4 years ago. And he was asked by him, or 3 years ago, he was asked by him, what's Indiana known for? What makes Indiana special? And he said he could not answer him. Yet today, unfortunately, one of the things we're becoming known for across the nation is the fact that we're selling off our state. I am opposed to privatization as an ideology. Look, I would never suggest that the state hire 200 architects. There's competition out there that we can get to make sure those services are provided. But when it comes to a revenue-generating asset like our toll roads or like our lottery or a mission-critical service like the FSSA, I believe the tougher decision is to fix those things. It's the revenue-generating assets that fund the mission-critical services in our state. I would never sell off one of those or privatize a mission-critical service or an asset. I believe that we should fix them, and that's a business attitude. Now, let's put government over the top of it. Government is not a business. It was never intended to be a business. It's the entity that brings us all together and makes sure that none of us is left behind. So I believe that we should hold on to the things that our grandparents and parents worked so hard to build. And we should send a message together as Democrats to this governor in November of this year. We should send him a message that the state of Indiana is not for sale.
With an MBA and a PhD in business, I can say, I think unequivocally, that there is a huge difference between the mission of a for-profit corporation and the services that government is supposed to provide. And I think what Governor Daniels is doing is not only good in terms of providing services, but they're not even good business decisions either. And I think the toll road is a classic example of that, which is, I think what he did was like selling a farm in order to pay for a combine. We have to make sure that the tax dollars that Hoosiers send to the state, that they are spent well and that our programs are well managed, and that is not happening under this administration.
Right now we're going to take what they call in my business a television timeout. So we will be back right after this, continuing our live coverage of tonight's Democratic gubernatorial debate. Welcome back to the IPFW campus in Fort Wayne and the brand new Reinhardt Music Center. What a beautiful building it is. I'm Linda Jackson. We continue tonight's debate with our very next question from the public, first answered by Jim Schellinger. The question reads, gas hit $3.49 a gallon this week. Even if our college grads get jobs, how can they afford to get to work?
Well, there's no question about it. It's not only, the question gets asked of me as I've traveled around the state, 200 trips. I've been in every one of the 92 counties, and constantly people ask me, are we in a recession? What I hear from people out there is Hoosier families across our state are struggling. They're concerned about their jobs. They're concerned about how they're going to pay their bills. How are they going to pay their food bills? How are they going to pay their home heating bills? How are they going to afford gas at the pump? I think it's important that we understand that. Unfortunately, I also think that we have to look at the big picture. We have to make responsible decisions and not knee-jerk decisions in an election year to try to win voters over. We have got to put forth responsible government reform, state and local government reform, look at both sides of the ledger as well as our tax situation, and work hard to figure out how we can make gas more affordable. I've wondered with this Iraq war that we have going on, that why we don't get, given the money that we're spending on this war, why we don't get special provisions from Iraq and special reduced rates on our oil prices. I think our oil problem is a federal problem that we have to address, and at the state level, we have to work hard to rid ourselves of being a donor state. I think Hoosiers, as I've traveled around the state, aren't even aware of the fact that for every dollar we send out to Washington, D.C., we get less than $1 back in return, unlike states like California. We need to fight for what's fair for our taxpayers in this state, and we need to make sure that we work to solve the problems at the root of the problem, not simply deal with the symptoms of the disease. Recently, Congresswoman Thompson proposed that we freeze the gas tax. I think that the estimates that were provided said that could cost our state as much as $100 million. And again, I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to work hard to be your governor and make responsible decisions that won't result in long-term problems for our state.
The late Governor Frank O'Bannon, I think, set a very good example when he declared an energy emergency earlier in this decade, and that allowed us to suspend the sales tax on gasoline. I have proposed that we do that, but given that I'm not governor, that's not something that I have the authority to do now. So I looked for another solution that would have long-term consequences and proposed that we cap the sales tax on gasoline at $2.75 pump price. And I think that's reasonable because, unfortunately, Hoosiers have gotten a double whammy here. The sales tax went up 1 percentage point, which is an increase of about 17% over the original 6 cents a dollar, at the same time that gasoline prices are going up. So they're not only paying higher prices for gasoline, but they're paying more sales tax. And I think that suspending the sales tax or capping it at $2.75 pump price makes a great deal of sense. Now, my opponent opposed that. He said it would be too costly. And I find that particularly interesting and also disconcerting because he has lobbied for increasing property taxes in Indiana by over $500 million. He and others from CSO Architects have regularly appeared before the Indiana School Property Tax Control Board lobbying for higher property taxes to support public projects that he would like his architecture firm to design. And I think that is inherently inconsistent. I really believe that we need to give Hoosier taxpayers, Hoosier motorists a break, and I would ask him to reconsider and hope he will come on board supporting suspending the gas tax at $2.75 pump price.
It's really disappointing and it's sad, but not unexpected, that Congresswoman Thompson would distort the truth and mislead you in her false claims. As I said before, Laura and I were told that people will say anything. They will do anything in an election to win an election. And it's just disappointing that my record of building a small, respectful business and my contributions to education in our state is being attacked. This is where I'm supposed to come back at my opponent. This is where I'm supposed to point out her voting record and specifics that have hurt Hoosiers. But I'm not going to go there, because I said I would follow my gut instincts from day one. And I don't think that's what you want to hear. We've got a governor that's polarized our state. We need a governor that's going to bring us all back together again and build unity in the state and move us forward.
Our next question comes from our panel, Tracy Warner, and it goes to Jill Long Thompson. Tracy?
Yeah, my question is about government reform. A commission that was chaired by former Governor Kernan and Chief Justice Shepard has recommended a number of significant changes in Indiana local government, doing away with townships, eliminating the county commissioners, and replacing them with the county executive, turning a number of county offices from elected positions to appointed positions. Which recommendations from the Kernan-Shepard report would you ask the legislature to adopt?
Well, I commend the Kernan-Shepard Commission for some very comprehensive work on reforming state government, and I think we ought to always be working to make our government more efficient, more responsive, more responsible. There is one particular proposal that they have recommended that I would like to see passed immediately, and that's that only bodies that are elected would have the authority to raise taxes. As a member of Congress, you may recall that I never once voted to raise taxes, never voted for a new tax. And I think it's important that anybody who has the authority to do that be held directly accountable to the voters. And so I think only those bodies that are elected ought to have the authority to do that. Now, regarding the Kernan-Shepard Commission's proposal, I think there are some proposals within that broader proposal that have merit, but I think this is just the starting point for us to hold public hearings. And I think it's important that we get input from people all over the state, including the small rural counties. You know, I am running for governor to be a fighter for all Hoosier families in all corners of the state. And I know that a government structure that might work for a highly incorporated Lake County or Marion County is not necessarily going to work for Marshall County or Whitley County or a more rural county. And so I think we need to hold hearings to determine what is actually going to be workable in various locations depending on population density, age of the population, and so forth. But I think it is time to work on reforming our state government, but it's important to get it right and to understand that one size does not fit all.
I'm very glad to see that the Kernan-Shepard report, the governor had the foresight to ask Joe Kernan, our former governor, even though he's been blamed for every problem in this state for the last 3 years and blamed and falsely criticized for handing over a bankrupt government, Governor Kernan stepped up to the plate. And Governor Kernan worked hard with Chief Justice Shepard to put forth the Kernan-Shepard report. And there are 27 recommendations in there to help reform local government. I think, though, that the governor didn't address any of them in this last session because, again, he put the cart in front of the horse. As a business person, I wish I had the privilege of addressing one side of the ledger. I have to address both sides of the ledger, and that's what we need to do in the state of Indiana. We won't solve this tax crisis until we look at not only local government reform, but state government reform. That has been excluded so far from the discussion. I want to lead a charge to look at state government and local government. I'm glad to hear the Congresswoman finally agrees with me that one size does not fit all in this state. And I spent significant time studying the report, visiting with people that helped put the report together. And I confirmed that it was never intended to be a take-all-or-nothing report, and it was never intended to be a one-size-fits-all. And I can tell you from traveling around this state, Steuben County is much different from Lake County, which is different from Switzerland and Posey and Marion County in the middle. We have to work and build partnerships with local government and work to reform state government together, something this governor is not going to be able to do because he's ridiculed and put local governments in crisis in this last 3 years. I am prepared to bring everyone together to work together to solve not only local government reform but state government reform toward moving all of Indiana forward because we can and should be doing better. I'm not a politician, so I will take a business person's approach to it and work very, very hard to reach out and make sure that every single person gets a seat at my table, that their voices are heard and their opinions are valued. And I think that's in stark contrast to our current governor's arrogant approach in being out of touch with local government.
When I served at the United States Department of Agriculture, I had responsibility for streamlining and reforming 3 separate agencies that were part of a comprehensive reform of the structure of the United States Department of Agriculture. And it's very challenging, but when you can make the operation more efficient and more responsive and more responsible, it's very gratifying, and it certainly is in the best interest of the taxpayers. And I think we do need to move forward on reform, but to make sure that we have flexibility so that counties of various sizes can have a structure that works best for them.
Our next question goes to Jim Schellinger. How will you address the growing problem of illegal immigration?
Well, I think immigration is a very important topic in our state right now, and we can only need to look around this room today and see that most of us here and most of our viewing officers, many of us we are all immigrants. It's a very important issue, and we have to deal with it very sensitively, although we have to deal with it in a firm manner and in a strong manner. It's just unfortunate that in the state of Indiana, we're having to deal with immigration problems because of failure at the federal government level, failure for them to have protected our borders. I think it's important that we work with our undocumented workers in this state, and we have to ask ourselves the question, are they taking away work and undermining jobs of people that work here today? Or are they taking jobs that people here in Indiana wouldn't work at today? You know, as I've traveled around the state, the opinions are very all across the state. Down in Knox County, Vincennes, Indiana, where there are a number of cantaloupe farms and watermelon farms that we all enjoy each summer, you know, the immigrant workers are very critical to these third and fourth generation families down there. And it's a very sensitive issue. But I think that we need to all work hard to make sure that the federal government does their job. We need to work with our senators, work with our congressional representatives to make sure they do their job protecting our borders. We have laws in place, and if they were enforced by the federal government, this wouldn't be a problem at the state level. Our state police force right now is already overburdened and taxed with too many responsibilities right now, let alone to have to enforce immigration laws. And so as governor, I will work to make sure that we hold our federal legislators accountable to enforce our immigration laws.
The primary reason that state governments and local governments are dealing with this particular issue of illegal immigration is that the federal government has not adequately addressed the problem. As governor, I will be a leader among governors of other states to ensure that we get reform, but I will also make sure that we do everything here in Indiana to work with the federal government to enforce the laws that are already on the books. And let me also say that it's very important that any reform we have be based on logic and reason and good sense and not get overzealous about passing something into law that's not enforceable and not workable. So it's important that we be very thoughtful. As governor, I will work with the federal government, but I will also work with other governors to make sure that we have the reform we need at the federal level.
And I would just note, too, that we be patient with this because it's such an important issue, and it's one that we must, again, be tough, we must be fair, and we must be practical. But there are many legal immigrants in our state today that are great contributors to the quality of life in our state, and they really work hard to support our economy. And undocumented workers equally work hard. These are not people that are illegal and creating and violating our laws in our state. So it's important that we understand and be a tolerant state.
All right, the time for question asking has come to a close tonight. I want to thank everyone for an excellent array of topics and for excellent questions themselves. Now comes time for closing comments, and because of the time that we have left, our closing comments can last up to about 2.5 minutes per candidate. And based on tonight's order, closing comments will begin with Jim Schellinger.
Well, I would once again like to express my thanks to you, Linda, to the distinguished panelists tonight, and to all of you that are in attendance tonight. This has been a great opportunity to express some of my thoughts and my ideas, and I again want to thank Congresswoman Thompson for being here tonight. I hope that your schedule allows us to do many more of these. I'd like to do a couple of them down south. I think we should do a couple of them in central Indiana as well. I think it's important for the voters to hear from us, to hear what we have to say, and to compare our thoughts and ideas. I have been, again, on over 200 trips around this state. I have been in every single one of the 92 counties, and I'm excited because people all around this state, whether they be Democrats, Independents, or Republicans alike, agree that Indiana can and should be doing better. We deserve better leadership in our state. We deserve leadership that listens to us and a leader that will entrust us to put our common sense Hoosier solutions to work. A leader that will work to unite and pick up all of Indiana and put an end to the polarization of in our state, because there's nothing we can't accomplish together. Having grown up 6 of 8 in a working class family, having put myself through college on the second shift at a tool and die shop, and having now grown a respectful and successful business, I think I have the experience, but more importantly, the judgment to be your governor. This is going to be an exciting election. It's going to be an election about choices. People like you and all around our state are going to have to choose between the politics of exclusion or someone that wants to build partnerships and move all of Indiana forward. You're going to have to choose between those who want to launch negative attacks and distort the truth versus someone that wants to provide vision with a plan for success. And you're going to have to choose between change or more of the same. But I am hopeful and confident that each and every one of you, your family members and your friends, will get out and vote in May. And you'll get back out and vote in November. And all I ask of you is to vote for the person that you believe shares your values, that stood in your shoes and walked in your walk. Vote for the person that you think shares your ideals, your dreams and hopes and optimism for a better Indiana. The person that you think represents change that can move all of us, not a select few, forward. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you do that, I am confident that you will not only be able to hold your head high knowing you've done that which is right and just for the state of Indiana, but I respectfully and humbly believe that I will have the honor and privilege of serving as your next governor. Thank you, and God bless you.
Again, thank you all for coming here tonight, and thank the Mike Down Center for hosting this. You know, Indiana has such promise, and I think back to my childhood when people moved here for the good-paying jobs, and I think about what we have the potential to be. For 3 terms, I had the honor of serving the Fort Wayne area in the United States Congress, and I always worked hard to do what I thought was in your best interest, and that's why I voted against all pay increases for members of Congress. It's why I voted against any new tax or tax increase, and it's why I stood up to bad trade deals like the North American Free Trade Agreement. But even so, my own mother lost her job at Larwell Products when the work was shipped to Mexico. I've also been very privileged to serve as Undersecretary for Rural Development at the United States Department of Agriculture. I had responsibility for a $10 billion budget and 7,000 employees, and helped create thousands of jobs across the United States, including many right here in Indiana. I've been very privileged. I've been a farmer, a professor. I've served in local government as a city councilwoman in Valparaiso. I have the background, the proven ability, and the ideas to put Indiana back on track. But most importantly, I am determined to fight for every Hoosier family across our state and every community across our state. You know, as governor, we can work together and keep the good-paying jobs right here. We can bring health insurance costs down and make it more accessible to everyone. And we can also turn our universities into springboards for innovation and job creation. I really think it's time for us in Indiana to dream big again, the way my dad taught me to dream big. I think it is time to get Indiana back on track. Thank you. Thank you very much. Really fast, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude tonight's debate, and we certainly want to thank Jim Schellinger and Jill Long Thompson, most of all for their willingness to run for office. I'm certain that you will agree with me. It is not an easy thing to do. This event was brought to you from the Reinhardt Music Center, this beautiful, beautiful building on the campus of IPFW in Fort Wayne, by IPFW, the University Democrats, the Mike Down Center for Indiana Politics as well. And my sincere thanks to our audience, both here in person and out in television land as well as online, especially to Andy Downs and Peter Newman, who is our news director at Indiana's Newscenter, and most especially to the two of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can they come up now?
Just a moment. In case you would like to know this, we're pleased to announce tonight that you can hear the entire debate on Northeast Indiana Public Radio. That's 89.1 WBOI, Monday, April 21st, Monday, April 21st at 7 p.m. Mark your calendars. My sincere thanks to all of you. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful night.